Hello, this is Sandy Shellis with Environmental Coffee House, and how are you today? I am here because I do have a lot to talk about, and what started me on today's trajectory, like the hurricanes that are on their way to North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and the Olivia on its way possibly to Hawaii, is that I got the video from Marsha on Democracy Now that she did, Amy Goodman did with mainstream scientist Michael Mann. But it was interesting because Amy's voice had a sound of urgency. I've heard her sound like this before. She's been in San Francisco for the Global Climate Action Summit all week. And with this convergence of the hurricane that could be catastrophic, is going to be catastrophic, and the state of our country and the state of, well, basically everything that's going on, I thought that we would talk about these things. There are many things that are happening. We've got two states with Democratic governors who were elected in 2017, and then we have South Carolina, who's got McMaster, Republican, who actually was for the pulling out of Paris. Now, before I go to Democracy Now a little more, just going to say a little thing about the Paris Agreement. There's a lot of people that aren't for the Paris Agreement, not because of climate change issue, but because they feel like it's too little too late. And I don't share that view. I share the view that we should be in it as a role model for all other countries. And then there's the view that with the Paris Climate Agreement that it's all for money. That's the denialist track, that it's all for money and that it's just to tax people and it's a big hoax. I mean, it's just insane that people today can't see that. And there was an article that came out about the two governors. There's articles about the two governors, and I thought I would tell you just a little bit about them really quickly. South Carolina's governor, and this was from the Post and Courier, he supports the pullout, like I just said. And there was something that was really interesting about it. He said it because he backed Donald Trump, but he has been astride of both sides of sensitive environmental issues. He did oppose Atlantic offshore drilling for oil and natural gas, but as governor, he says he has questions about the issue. But he's not. He's just not a person that, if you have a catastrophic hurricane coming to your state, he did nothing to stop it, to at least in his state, to make the littlest effort towards changing things, changing the business as usual norm of all this that's going on. Then there's the other governor, who is Ralph Northam, and he's the governor of Virginia. Now, Ralph is more progressive, obviously. He's on the other side of the fence. He vetoed legislation which would have limited Virginia's ability to fight global warming and create clean energy jobs. This was from April 9th, 2018. And the climate change affects all citizens and business entities in the Commonwealth, especially those located in coastal regions. The Commonwealth must have all tools available to combat climate change and protect its residents. Well, they're going to need those tools now. Thank you. And the other governor is, what's his name? Roy Cooper. He is the governor of North Carolina. Now, Cooper interestingly enough, he entered into North Carolina's into the U.S. Climate Alliance with 14 other states in response to Trump pulling out. So here's a guy in North Carolina who is actually poised to really take the hit of this thing, who has some vision, okay? No matter what you want to think about it being too late, or that we've passed the tipping point, or that there are no solutions, you never stop. Never stop. None of us can ever stop. And this guy isn't. So we shall see what happens. But I just thought that was interesting about the three governors for you to hear about the differences in them, that two of them are progressively thinking on climate change. They understand that they have states that are going to be hurt really badly, but it's not always money. And it seems to be that that's the whole denialist underlying issue here is money. You know, it really is. It's money. But I digress. So Democracy Now, let's go a little bit to this one. And I'm going to do an experiment because I want to see if this works. So give me a second. And I'm going to play a clip, and I'm going to see if this plays. I'm not going to go off it. I'm going to play the clip, and I am going to see if you can hear it. Now, tell me if you can hear it or not. Important. I'm changing this, so let's see if this works.
And finally, Michael Mann, although I said finally about 4 times right now, but there is,
can you hear it?
Nonstop coverage, as there should be, of this Category 4, possibly 5 hurricane that's barreling down on the Carolinas and Virginia. 1.5 million people being evacuated. And yet there is rarely a mention by these meteorologists when people are watching TV of the connection to climate change. This is when people are taking in the most information. Your thoughts on this, on the TV meteorologist coverage? I'm not talking about the specials that are occasionally done on a network, but the daily drumbeat coverage of these catastrophes, linking them to climate change.
Yeah, you know, there are some great meteorologists out there who are trying to connect the dots for the public. Rob Marciano of Good Morning America comes to mind. But too often, our meteorologists, our broadcast meteorologists, don't really connect the dots for the public when it comes to the role that climate change is playing here. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. One of them is just that it requires context, it requires explanation. And in a soundbite driven media environment that we live in today, and the 24-hour news, the very rapid 24-hour news cycle, sometimes it's difficult to work that context into discussions of what role is climate change playing with these extreme weather events. We actually did see some good coverage this summer in the wake of these unprecedented weather events, the California wildfires, unprecedented floods and heat waves and drought around the globe. In fact, we did see network news coverage where they were talking about the role that climate change was playing. But that was only after many of us complained about the lack of that context. They were listening to us, and there was eventually an opportunity to provide that. I hope that'll happen here. We're at the very beginning right now of the discussion of the news cycle that's going to be driven by Florence and its impacts. And so my hope is that we will, as the coverage proceeds, see that context, that network news programs will be inviting climate scientists like myself onto those programs to talk about these linkages, because it's a huge lost opportunity if we don't explain to the public the fact that much of the threat that we're seeing today when it comes to these unprecedented weather extremes is being caused by the aggravating effect of climate change. The public needs to understand that so they can force policymakers to act on this problem.
Michael Mann, I want to thank you for being with us, distinguished professor and director of the Earth.
Well, that was interesting. And that's the first time I was successful with being able to play the screen in the screen. So, okay for me. So that was my question too, when I watch this and all the wonderful things that are going on in San Francisco and getting coverage and people maybe waking up We really need to wake people up. That's what we all do here. That's what I'm doing here. Because basically, if we don't, we're there. We're 2 minutes to midnight. And that is why I'm here. So Amy Goodman asked a question, and how many of you, when you watch your local news, they talk about these things, how many of you ever hear the news people put it together, climate change with what's going on? They very rarely don't, like Michael said, because then they have to get into something. But they really should have a prepared, even if it's not prepared, have something to say that these storms, we know, for example, I know by this that I put up earlier from Eric, not this one, sorry. Eric Holthouse, his name is, to his Twitter, hurricane, it's now a category 4, and it has the warmest waters ahead of the path. He's a meteorologist, but he's not on television. So they could just say the warming waters caused by a warming climate caused by global climate change is what is going to make this even worse and more catastrophic. We need to start hearing this in the mainstream media way more than just what we're finding on YouTube. When I had that video, first it had 800 and something views, then it had, I don't know, a couple of thousand. But you get the regular old, some of these, I'm not gonna, conspiracy types of videos. They're getting 200 and 300,000 people. Where are our 200 and 300,000 people to watch reality of what's going on in our world? Where are they? they should really be showing up, because like I said, we are really 2 minutes to midnight. And my heart goes out to everybody in the wake of this storm. This is, I read the comments on the video, on Amy's video, and so many of them are trolly, denial people that will sit there and call us fear-mongers. But I don't think we're fear-mongers when the storm is there and when it's way worse than every other storm that they may have experienced before, like what happened in Houston. And what is it? We don't learn? Do we not learn? Do we really want it to be our last chance? Because we're pretty much on our last chance. So now I'm going to go into something a little bit different. We've talked about the governors of those states. We've talked about Democracy Now. I go and watch the videos she put up. They're pretty good. We've talked about meteorology, and specifically television meteorology, and how we really need to have the truth, unless they're just so afraid that we're not going to buy anything or people are going to be so scared things are going to change so much. We can't be like that. But I'm going to juxtaposition. I'm going to juxtaposition right into what's going to happen in that state. Okay. Now, there's 2 good articles I've got. And the first one I'm going to go into is what's going to happen to the farm animals. And lately I've been thinking about animals a lot in these situations. And this one is for Mercy for Animals, but they make some good points about the fact that this is a category 4 right now with 130-degree winds, just estimated landfall, could be on Thursday evening, 150-mile-an-hour winds. All right, we all know about this, but while the states are bracing for impact and they're ordering evacuations and preparing for floods, millions of living beings will not even be considered, and they are the farm animals. They said that there are so many hogs in North Carolina, 9.3 million hogs at farms in 2016, and the state's population was 10 million. The fact that pigs almost outnumber human residents is staggering. Also, poultry production in North Carolina has increased from 60 million to 148 million birds in just 20 years. What's being done on those farms? I don't know. There's nothing online I could find in the short time that I was getting ready for this. So, according to the Post, the governor said a lot of poultry and animals, thousands already had drowned, and that more casualties were expected. Now, that was back in 2016. So the article says this isn't a possibility. It's almost certain. It's going to be devastating. And I'm worried about people, but people have time. People are going to evacuate. And we worry about people. You want to worry about people? Check out Understanding Climate Change. They've got videos. They play videos probably every 10 days from around the world of weather events that are going on. And they're pretty horrific. The United States is bracing for a catastrophic hurricane. But let me tell you something. If you watch Understanding Climate Change, countries all over the world are experiencing climate change and catastrophic weather way more than we know. Way more than we know because we don't see it on the mainstream media. We just don't. So this article talks about that, and it's really sad about the factory farming industry because they'll willingly leave trapped farm animals behind to drown, and they see animals nothing more than commodities, and it's tragic, and they're just going to see them as lost profits. That was terrible. Marcia had put that up on our website. It's Marcia Sandy Day today because we've been communicating, and that's what got me online today, fidgeting around here for you to talk about this today. It's so serious what's going to happen. Here's an article. Now, this is a really good one, and it's from Common Dreams that came out today. We'll go through this one. We'll talk about a couple of other things, and then here we go. So as 1.5 million flee Hurricane Florence, worries grow over half a dozen nuclear power plants in the storm's path. So Common Dreams hooked onto that there are at least 5 nuclear power plants in the projected path of Hurricane Florence. At least that many more at risk from storm surge. All are decades old. Many are the exact same model as the failed Fukushima reactors, which you might recall didn't handle flooding very well. Now, during last year's, supposedly, the nuke plant did very well in Texas, or it remained online, but I don't know if it got a direct hit. I don't have that information specifically on me at this moment. But these plants are thought to lie in the path of the hurricane, which is expected to make landfall on the southeastern U.S. coast on Thursday. And they include North Carolina's Brunswick Nuclear Power Plant in Southport, Duke Energy Sutton Steam Plant in Wilmington, and South Carolina's VC Summer Nuclear Station in Jenkinsville. If any of you live in those areas, please see what's being prepared before you leave or when you leave. Know what's going on in your own backyard with those plants. Florence will approach this with winds in excess of 100 miles an hour on the Carolina coast. And it will approach the Brunswick Nuclear Power Plant as well as Duke Sutton Steam Plant, said Ed Valley, a North Carolina-based meteorologist. He told Zero Hedge, dangerous wind gusts and flooding will be the largest threat to these operations, with inland plants being susceptible to inland flooding. So we don't hear a lot about this. Not on the news. This is Common Dreams. It's a progressive publication. They said that, in 2005, HuffPost and Weather.com identified Brunswick as one of the East Coast's most at-risk nuclear power plants in the event of rising sea levels and the storm surges that come with them. So let's please hope for the best. And that word, hope. But in that situation, I don't want to see anything happen to anybody, animals, nuclear, nothing. And then a lot of people will say, well, if they did, they'll learn. Well, why can't we just teach them this way? Let's teach people through schools. Let's teach people through education. Let's not wish the worst. Please. They say, Weather Underground says, based on current forecasts, Florence could produce Highest storm surge on record in the Carolinas, 15 to 20 feet, quite possible. This is pretty bad. And they're talking about the Fukushima disaster is the highest profile nuclear catastrophe caused by a natural disaster, climate change induced disaster, climate change worsened disaster, warmer waters due to climate change, emissions causing climate change to make the water warmer. So it's pretty scary, and we don't want to think of this happening, you know, a storm surge happening that will be Fukushima-esque. We don't. And do we even want to be 2 minutes to midnight? No, we don't. That's what the atomic physicists had said. So they're talking about even when a plant is not operating, the time spent, the spent fuel stored on site, typically uranium, will continue to emit heat and must be cooled using equipment that relies on the plant's own power. Flooding can cause a loss of power, and in serious conditions, it can damage backup generators. Without a cooling system, reactors can overheat and damage the facility to the point of releasing radioactive material. Let's just understand that this can happen. We don't want it to happen. So today, I went through these things. There are not a lot of things I wanted to go through. I just really was taken back, maybe a little bit by Amy Goodman's voice. We are, folks, we are in a global climate emergency. And if you don't believe me, just watch the YouTube channel. Again, Understanding Climate Change. I believe that's the name. I don't have it pulled up. See what's going on. Look at our page. Everything we put on there is something that has serious overtones. Look at the Arctic sea ice page. Learn about the Arctic melting. There is so much out there, but you have to decipher through the bullshit to find the gems, you know? And I'm sorry that I feel that way, but there's a lot of bullshit out there. We happen to not be. So on this September 11th, which so many years ago, that pretty horrible day and that pretty horrible event happened, we're on the precipice of a hurricane in the United States of catastrophic proportions. We want everybody to be okay. And I'm going to end with something. I'm going to find it. I'm going to end with something that I thought was poignant and interesting, and then we'll go for a couple of comments. On our page, Antonio Reed had posted something that really, it moved me because he's from North Carolina, and he has been handling a lot of lately our updates on hurricanes, and he's been going, you know, on weather, and he's been going to different weather modeling. I think I told you this before, and I bet this is not going to let me get there. I don't know why, but it's not letting me get there. This is a shame. I wonder if I could find it. I wish I could find it. Well, it's too bad because it was really good, but my computer is, you know, my internet is just horrible, and it will stop me on the iPad. And I'm really sorry because I really wanted to read this to you. But in the meantime, while I look for it, Michael says, how many more is it going to take? How many more? You tell me. People have to vote. Oh, here it is. I found it. It let me go in there. Okay. Antonio posts this. North Carolina is the only home I have ever known. The models have intensified wind and rain predictions. Possible Category 5 headed towards North Carolina with a strong chance of stalling for days. Our governor has declared a state of emergency. If the models are correct, then half the state faces historic devastation like we haven't seen since the Civil War in just the next 5 days. It's still early. the models could change. I will wake up one day and the coast will be gone. What happened? What happened to my sweet, sweet Carolina? What happened to the only place I have ever called home? Antonio reporting from North Carolina. Thank you, Antonio. Everybody be safe. Share this. We'll be back. Peace.